Good day, good people. You're listening to Lifting the Veil. This is your host, Cari-lee, and today we have Cindy Sheehan, mother of U.S. Army Specialist Casey Sheehan, who was killed in the Iraqi War in 2004. In August 2005, Cindy gained international media attention for her extended anti-war protest at her homemade camp outside George W.'s Texas ranch, which I was completely ecstatic about. In 2008, she ran for Congress. She is the author of the memoir Peace Mom, A Mother's Journey Through Heartache to Activism in 2006, and she is now running for vice presidency alongside Roseanne Barr, and she's got the nominee for the Peace and Freedom Party. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cari-lee.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, I also see here that you were sued for not paying your taxes. That's something that is something that we've talked about much on the show as far as tax paying being fraud to begin with, but you've taken it a new direction because you're saying you've taken my son, therefore I'm not paying taxes ever again. I really like that.
Oh, thank you. And of course, my tax protest started out first because of Casey. And he was taken, of course, in an illegal and immoral war. And I don't think that there's much dispute about that anymore. That the Bush administration lied, took our country in a totally destructive and unnecessary direction after 9/11. And my son is dead because of that. And, that's just something that a lot of people don't really understand, that, that's permanent and that's serious. And my son's life was cut short at 24 for the lies of the U.S. government. So at first it started out to be a protest because of that, but now, of course, it's expanded to, everybody that's in danger of losing their lives because of the U.S. empire and their programs and policies, and the oppression, the police state oppression here in our own country. Of course, it has gotten worse in the last 11 years, almost since 9/11. So I refuse to pay for the crimes. I refuse to be, a co-criminal with my government in their crimes against humanity and crimes against the Constitution. And so, yeah, I am being persecuted by the Department of Justice because of this, and the IRS. And it's just amazing to me that people that try to stop crimes or oppose crimes get prosecuted in this country when the people who commit actual crimes get to prosper.
Well, of course, that's the way it is. The fat cats get fatter, and we're all left to sway in the wind, right?
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the thing is that they don't. It's not looked upon as something that you have anything to stake out of. Your son, they're looking at it like your son made the choice to go fight in the war, and that has nothing to do with you. And they really don't realize how many mothers' sons are going over to kill how many other mothers' sons. For what? For indoctrination, for the idea that they're going to be gloriously decorated at the end of it all, when all they are is being terrorists walking into another country, terrorizing another country for gold, oil, power, whatever the case may be.
Well, certainly, when you're in the military, you don't really have much choice, and there is a situation in the United States where it is a volunteer army, but people have to realize that children of the working class or the poor classes here in the United States, they have very little options or opportunities for a good paying job or to go to college. They've made it very hard for our children to, have any choices when it comes to that, military service or, not getting an education or not getting a job. I mean, we were opposed to Casey joining the military, but he was 21 years of, 21 years old. He was of age. We really couldn't do much to stop him about it, but he joined to get his college education. And this goes to something that happened to me like 7 years ago now, I was up in Canada and I met in Ottawa with members of the Bloc Québécois. And they were saying, well, we can't support U.S. soldiers being refugees up here in Canada because it's an all voluntary military. And I explained these things to her. Casey joined it before Iraq, and when you join the military, you always know that there's a chance that you might have to defend your country because that's what a military should be used for. But they didn't. The Bloc Québécois didn't support the invasion of Iraq. And I asked the ladies who were the ministers in that party. I said, why should our young people make a choice between going to prison or going to an illegal and immoral war based on lies? And I think they finally saw it my way.
Excellent. That is so good because, I mean, in all reality, anybody that you have to understand, I had a girlfriend of mine and her husband, and in Canada, it's really no different because it's voluntary here too. But they had turned around and said, we're going to go and join into the army and enlist in the army. And why? It was about the money. That's a horrible reason to pick up a gun and go and shoot other people. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not even about really money. It's about existence, is about survival. And I've heard of some people joining the military here in the United States because, they had loved ones who had terminal illnesses and they couldn't get health coverage, so they joined the military for the health insurance. It's just a terrible, horrible, discompassionate system that we live under here in the United States. At least up in Canada, you don't have to worry about the healthcare aspect of it. It's just
Yeah, that's
really
true.
a terrible situation that we find ourselves in.
Oh, definitely. Now, I have some hard questions to ask you because you yourself and Roseanne, you're diving into, that political arena now. And there's, I mean, you've seen the awakening of people all over the world that are sitting there going, okay, wait, things aren't right anymore. And we
Hmm.
need to fix this. And a lot of the world's very confused as to how to fix it. And honestly, from my standpoint, I love Roseanne's attitude. And I absolutely adore your passion and your conviction because of everything that I've seen you do and put out there. But like I said, there are some difficult questions to ask. Like, how do you feel about the Federal Reserve and International Bank, the banking cartel, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan stealing the entire wealth of your nation?
Well, it's not, that's not a hard question. Roseanne and I and our party, the Peace and Freedom Party, believe that the Federal Reserve should be nationalized and as well as bankings and put in the democratic control of the people in the communities. And, Roseanne has made some pretty provocative statements about the banksters who got us into this situation. I am not and never will be in favor of the death penalty, but I don't know if Roseanne was kidding when she said like death sentences for the banksters that got us these into these situations. But I believe, and as Roseanne does, and as my party does, that the prison industrial complex here in the United States is getting more and more powerful. The United States incarcerates a higher percent or proportion of the population than any other country in the entire world. Our prisons are filled with people who are in there on minor nonviolent charges like drug charges and marijuana and things like that. And so we would like to empty the prisons of people like that to make room for people like the CEO of Goldman Sachs, someone like John Corzine, who ran, the MF Global into the ground and stole people's money. And Goldman Sachs and John Corzine are getting away with what they did. And so we want to make room for people like that. And not just people in the finance industry, the banksters, but the gangsters in the military industrial complex, the Bush regime, the Obama regime, they all need to be held accountable for what they've done to the world.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, you were talking about, people being in jail for drugs, i.e., marijuana. Now, myself, I just interviewed Rick Simpson, who's from PhoenixTears.ca, also did the film Run from the Cure. Where do you and Roseanne stand on the marijuana topic? I'd rather call it cannabis because I think that
Yeah,
there's less of a, stigma towards that. But cannabis oil's been proven. Tommy Chong right now saying,
yeah,
I've been taking the oil and I'm like 99% cured. We have real cures for things like cancer and so many other diseases. Where do you and Roseanne stand on issues like this?
and that's a very easy question too. I interviewed Tommy Chong on my radio show. I do have a radio show, Cindy Sheehan Soapbox, but um, the medicinal cannabis is one of Roseanne's major issues, and mine also, is that we agree that it is almost a magical medicine, and big pharma and the I don't even like to call it healthcare industry, the death care industry here in the United States recognize that, and they recognize the curative properties of it, and not just it doesn't just cure things like in Tommy Chong's case, but it can alleviate post-traumatic stress disorder that millions of our veterans are suffering. Veterans going all the way back to the Vietnam era now, and so we are 100% in favor of. Well, we want decriminalization. We just don't want the federal government to stop raiding our dispensaries and growers here in California. The people of California have spoken. We agree with medicinal cannabis. We want it to be legal, and we want people to be, it to be available to people for its curative powers, and its ability to relieve depression and stress and all kinds of things. And we want the federal government out of California in this issue. And we want, cannabis and hemp to be legal.
Awesome. I can't agree with you anymore. There's so many different cures that there's so many different uses. If we were to use hemp, we wouldn't need the fossil fuels anymore. It just, the list goes
Right.
on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I think that I agree that hemp could save the world. We could make what's made out of plastic now can be made out of hemp, paper, all it just the we couldn't even list everything that hemp would be better for. So much better for the environment, and of course, it's the petroleum industry and the paper industry and etc. are and the medical industry, of course, are blocking those kinds of usages.
Yeah, for sure. It's time to change DuPont to DuPont. And we'll just leave it at that. What's your positioning on planting and nurturing, harvesting, and possessing plants from a garden on private property for personal, nutritional, medicinal, or spiritual applications? Now, there's been a lot of controversy in the United States where the health board comes in and pours bleach all over organic farmers' foods.
Right.
I was like, myself, my friends, my loved ones, in complete uproar over this. Outrage. How could you possibly take bleach and pour it over organic foods? We're very strongly against Monsanto.
Right.
What do you think about all of this? Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, of course, uh, we're in complete agreement on this issue too. We're against Monsanto and genetically modified organisms. We think that people's heritage should be protected with their seeds, and people should have the right to grow organic food and organic um, marijuana if that's what they want to do, of course. And so we're having a big rally in Davis, California, because Davis, California has a university that's a big ag school, and Monsanto is very active in, providing grants and things like that to the school. And so, of course, they promote genetically modified organisms, and so we're having a big rally September 17th against Monsanto there. Um, but not only that is Monsanto is killing our bees, and that's like is a very distressing and urgent situation that we need to protect our bees also.
Oh, our bees and ourselves for sure. I'm not into frankenfood myself. I
No,
don't
me.
want my children growing third eyes and glowing in the dark as it is. It's hard enough with what's going on from Fukushima's radiation. We have a hard enough time trying to stabilize from that. The last thing that we need is anybody coming in. Like Canada just approved that we get, I think it was last year or the year before, that we can have genetically modified wheat. I don't want that.
No.
I don't want genetically modified anything. I had interviewed somebody a couple of years ago and they were talking about the fact that their twin sons, were allergic to protein. They could not ingest protein at all whatsoever. And they found out because their children were going to be taken away from them because of abuse, because they were eating protein, but they couldn't figure out how they were getting it. And it was from the tomatoes. They had pig and frog hormones that were injected into them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so because of that, the children were getting sick and they almost had their kids taken away. So I just don't understand how they figure playing God with our vegetables is going to make anything better unless they're trying to do something that's going to, I mean, they're taking the nutrients out of everything. They're messing up with a good thing. I'm sure nature had no intention of somebody coming around and poking needles into her.
Well, and it's just also the petroleum factor. The food is grown with fertilizer that has petroleum in it, so it's like our DNA is being altered to be petroleum beings instead of you know carbon beings. So we really need to. I think food security is going to be the most important thing in the coming decades. So, as much as we can, we need to grow our own food and support local farmers markets, and do whatever we can to eat as close to the original state of food as we can. It's not always going to be possible, but if we make an effort, like as we do with my children and grandchildren, it it just is urgent, I think, that we do that.
Something that's really important is that you just mentioned your children. Teaching our kids nowadays nutrition is the most important thing because they're bombarded by everything on television and whatever else that shows them that everything that you're eating should be processed. I don't see anything on TV that really touts, "Yay, eat good food." Um, what's the message that you want to send out to parents and their kids about the way that we're raising our children? Because society's pretty messed up. And I know the
Um,
government shouldn't really necessarily have a say, but you want to set some kind of example of some sort, right?
right. Well, I think the most important thing is that we teach our children critical thinking of authority, is that we don't blindly obey authority just because authority has said that it's authority. And that goes, from the church to the government to parental authority, too, is that children should have the right to question decisions and be responsible for their own actions, but to also, be in conversation with authority about. It's almost like consensus. It's like just because you say you're authority over me doesn't give you the right to be authoritarian, and that peaceful solutions are there's always a peaceful solution to any situation. And I know I taught my children that, and I taught my children all of these things, but society is very overwhelming. It's got a profundity that's hard to fight and balance out in the home. And so we just have to really be more vigilant of these, institutions that want to take away the authority and the love of a family and replace it with authoritarian structures. So even though I was vigilant with my children, I lost one. And so I think we need to also teach our children that there's billions of people on this planet, and every single one of the people on this planet is precious and beautiful, and it has the same existential right as we do. And so I think those are very important things that we need to teach our children.
Well said. Very well said. Now, back to all things political and warmongering. How many countries do you think the U.S. should be maintaining military bases in?
0.
I love you.
Maybe, we can have some here in our own country, but, we shouldn't have a standing army. Standing armies are for empire. If there is an emergency situation, as in the past, we can easily, have people step up to help defend the country. But we should have 0 bases. We should have 0 occupations around the world, and we should bring our troops back, and we should bring our tax dollars back here. When we want something here, and the 99%, we're always told there's no money. There's no money for education. There's no money for healthcare. There's no money for transportation. There's no money for healthy food free of
Just
GMOs.
bombs.
But there's always money for war.
Always money for
bombs. We just need to reprioritize. And I think that Roseanne and I, our campaign is about a reprioritization of our nation's resources.
That sounds fantastic. Now you're going to have to forgive me because it's not that I'm anti-politic, but political. It's just that I've been disappointed many, many times, as I think we all have. So now you remember that big hoopla that happened as Obama was coming into power. Before he came into power, he had such an amazing spiel that he was spewing, and he was bringing change, and the troops were coming home, and Gitmo was getting closed down, and he spent more money on war than George W. did. Mm-hmm. Now, not only that, but he got a Nobel Peace Prize right out the gate for doing nothing. Right. Now, my question to you, it's a gentleman's club.
Right.
Kind of, sort of.
Right.
And everybody goes in saying that they're going to change something. And once they get in, suddenly they get gray hair and they go into a back room and they're deprogrammed or programmed or something. And they come back out doing exactly what the fat cats want them to do. What guarantee or I'm not trying really hard not to be insulting here, but what can you and Roseanne say that's going to be different? How do you figure it's going to work out differently if Roseanne's president and you're vice president? What is the difference going to be when you're answering to all the fat cats? Because it seems to be that the last person that spoke up against any of this was shot, and there hasn't been a true president since. And that's a little harsh maybe, but that's the way I feel.
Well, first of all, neither Roseanne or I supported Barack Obama when he ran in 2008. Mm-hmm. Both of us supported the Green Party candidate, Cynthia McKinney, and Barack Obama never promised any of those things that you just said. You had to listen very carefully, or not even listen carefully, just listen with both ears and your brain to what he was actually saying. Barack Obama had very little significant difference between he and John McCain. And so the only, in true things that really matter, like war and police state oppression, things like that, the two candidates in the major parties are almost identical. The only situations that you have anything differing is in the wedge issues, like abortion and gay marriage and things like that. And so, if anybody's a candidate of the Democratic or Republican Party, they are, I think, automatically part of the system. Barack Obama would not have become the nominee of the Democratic Party if he hadn't sold out a long time before he became the nominee of the Democratic Party.
Agreed.
And so, the situation here is, Roseanne and I are running to help spread these ideas, to help build a movement. I don't think we have any illusions or delusions that we're going to actually win. What we want to do is build a movement for true grassroots change, and to tell people that, yes, the Democrats and the Republicans have held this country hostage for decades and decades, and just because it is this way today doesn't mean it has to be this way tomorrow. So hopefully our candidacy will be able to spread the ideas of peace and freedom from California to New York and down to Florida and then back around again, and that we will actually have a true movement for change.
That's awesome. And honestly, we were speaking about it over breakfast, and what you just said was exactly what we guesstimated, I guess you could say, that you just wanted to start that grassroots movement. But I'm afraid, well, not afraid at all, I'm kind of intrigued to think that more people are going to jump onto this than you think. Because there's more people out there that are so fed up with the
Uh-huh.
way things are being run that you might be surprised in the end. So let's just play a what if for a minute. What if you guys do get in? What if Roseanne does become president? What if you are vice president? What then?
Oh my gosh, it would be a different paradigm here in the United States. Of course, I would hope that if Roseanne and I do get elected, that we would, adhere to the principles of our Constitution in the United States. What I would really like what would be to hold a new constitutional convention and rewrite the Constitution as a people's document, not as a document for the elite. But we have a foundation, and of course, the Bill of Rights of our Constitution at the time was a very liberal document, and if it was adhered to, the situation in the United States, the paradigm would be a lot different. And so the president and the vice president, they don't have imperial powers. They don't have unitary executive powers. So we would have to deal with the other branches of the government. But the being president, I think Teddy Roosevelt says, gives one a bully pulpit. It gives the opportunity to build these movements and these cells of change throughout the country to when maybe in 2000 and 14, we could start to change the complexion of Congress to one that is more radical and one that's more revolutionary, and begin the process. As president, though, and vice president, we would have the power to end the wars. We would have the power to bring our troops home, to close military bases. We would have the power to have our Department of Justice give true investigations into war criminals and the banksters. And the one thing that we would have power to would be to pardon people who are political prisoners in the United States, such as Mumia, such as Leonard Peltier, such as the Cuban Five and Lynn Stewart. These people who have stood up to the empire and have paid the price for it. So it would be, an exciting time, but also like Bob Marley used to sing. I think he would say he would be elected president on Friday, sworn in on Saturday, and assassinated on Sunday.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
We don't want that.
we have to be, Roseanne and I feel that, and sometimes I don't think I can speak for her, but sometimes I know I can speak for her. That as mothers and as matriarchs and as grandmothers, we feel that we are willing, just putting yourself into the electoral arena here in the United States is like throwing yourself into, a dung heap and throwing and making yourself a sacrificial lamb. So we think these things are urgent, and we're not afraid to lead the way to a better world.
Blessed be the messengers. Um, as far as Roseanne goes, I mean, I was raised on Roseanne. I don't know anybody who was my age that wasn't. And the brilliance about her Little Big Show was that it showed reality a little bit more than any other show on television did. And she's always been so raw. How do you keep up with her? Because I mean, at 37, I don't know that I could.
Right. Well, one of my superpowers is superhuman energy.
Mine too. I'm sipping coffee out of my Wonder Woman mug as we speak.
So I don't have any problem keeping up with her at all, for sure.
Awesome. Well, you're both forces. Both of you are complete forces. Honestly, like energy, connected. If there was to be a force to be reckoned with, the two of you definitely are well matched for each other. Now we're talking about political prisoners, and we have this whole very uncomfortable, very upsetting situation with Brandon Robb. What are your feelings on him and his situation right now, being taken into custody and being called a terrorist for speaking up against his government via Facebook?
Oh, okay. I forgot to also mention Bradley Manning.
Mm,
I
hmm.
said political prisoners, and Roseanne and I have a very strong position about freeing Bradley Manning. And Barack Obama, his chain of command, already has said he's guilty, and that is something that is strictly prohibited. That someone in a chain of command would pronounce a sentence, or not a sentence, but a verdict on, somebody who was being supposedly tried. But of course, Bradley Manning's not being tried, he's being persecuted. The person you just asked me about, he's the one that said some things on Facebook, and he got rounded up, and I understand he's in a was put under observation.
Right, that's Brandon Robb. I was listening to an interview with his mother actually, and he had
Uh-huh.
said whatever against the government, and then they came in, and I think it's amazing that he can shut his mouth, pick up a gun, go and shoot people, come home and shut his mouth again, because the minute you speak out against your government, and it's just absolutely awful. It's like we're living in Nazi Germany.
Well, I like think that the people from the top down should have priority of prosecution for war crimes and crimes against humanity. I'm first and foremost not a fan of the military, especially the Marine Corps. But and so I think that you're right. I think that prosecution should be for war crimes. And I can't really talk about this case that much because I haven't been following it very closely. But one thing he said that I read, one of his updates, was something about sharpening his axe and starting to, you know, sever heads or something like that. That's disturbing. And,
True enough.
maybe he does have some post traumatic stress disorder, but what should be happening instead of him being, persecuted like this, because I don't support what the government is doing either, is that he should maybe, that he might have traumatic brain injury like so many of our um, troops do when they're coming back from the war zones, and it causes them to act erratically and things like that. So we need a compassionate society that doesn't send our young people off to these horrible situations that, I say my son came home and literally came home in a box but none of our young people come home the same. They come home mentally, physically, or emotionally injured, and some of them are injured beyond repair. And we have a situation where many of our vets, I think up to six vets from the post 9/11 era, are committing suicide every day. Twice as many of our Vietnam vets have committed suicide than were killed in Vietnam. So it's a terrible kind of like, you know, circular tragedies that keep on happening over and over and over again. And every generation finds our young people locked in these meat grinders, and they can't get the help that they need. So I hope that this person gets the help that he needs and doesn't get tortured like Bradley Manning was being tortured. And, of course, I send my love out to his family and to the people of the world who have been so harmed by the empire.
Yeah, I really like you. I love your answers because it's so much common sense. You brought up the point that he was saying some disturbing things, and that's what needs to be looked at, and that he needs. It all comes down to they need love. They
He
need
needs
to be healed.
absolute love. Yes, healing is something that can't even begin when the murder and the slaughter is still taking place. So, if Roseanne and I were elected, the slaughter would stop and the healing would begin.
And this is something that I just got goosebumps everywhere, but we're coming into the time where the patriarchal society that has been created for us is completely falling apart. And I'm not saying it's not a war of the sexes. I don't mean it that way. But I think we're coming, and it's been said through various different things that, we're coming into the time of the feminine, where women are going to take back not their rightful places, but we're supposed to be more than we are, what society has deemed to us. I honestly believe that we've been cut into pieces and shown that, it's more important for us to have a career than to raise our families. But what are mothers? We're the backbone of the family. We're the ones that are supposed to, and we've been belittled through society, told that we have to work and let other people raise our children. Now, I know that I just kind of rambled that off very scattered, but what are your thoughts on what I just said?
Um, well, of course, the feminine has been demonized throughout history. Women, we're just getting back to the place where, we recognize that healing comes organically, not, from the patriarchy. And women who realized that were called witches, and they were burned at the stake. And so we have to recover from that situation. And what I just find so tragic, and as a feminist, and as a matriot, we don't say patriot, we say matriot. I think that people who rise to the top here in the empire and the status quo, people like Hillary Clinton, people like Condoleezza Rice, or on the other side of the ocean, people like Margaret Thatcher, they have been so, co-opted and tainted and poisoned by the patriarchy that they act like they might have the outward and internal characteristics of a female, but they act like a male. We need people who, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, we need people who understand that the power for healing and love comes from the matriarchal side of our twin beings within ourselves. And I hope that's not sounding like too metaphysical or whatever, but I believe that that that's where we're going to have a healthy society, is when we understand that is the healing and the positive side of our beings. And so Roseanne and I are like wanting to become part of this disease system, but not be co-opted or poisoned by it. So, both of us are in the stage of our lives where I think that it would be easier to resist. I mean, we weren't picked from our elite universities when we were university students to become poisoned by the system. So
Yeah.
I don't think we will be able to be poisoned by the system.
Excellent answer. Now, back to the idea of a little bit of and I'm not a feminist by any means, and I have nothing but respect and love for my brothers as much as I do my sisters. And I see that we're in society, I think we're both kind of sick. The men, it seems that society's trying to turn them into girls with the metrosexual thing. I'm sorry for whoever I'm offending. Please don't hold it against me. I'm just observing. And then the females, and it seems like we're pitting each other against, everybody's pitting against each other when we should be combining forces and appreciating each other's qualities. 100, 200 years ago, before the Europeans got here, the Spaniards got here, whatever the case may be, well, that's an argument for another time. The countries were run in the indigenous world by the clan mothers. And it would almost seem that you and Roseanne are at that stage in your life where that's where you are. You're at that clan mother stage where you have the wisdom that you can offer your brothers and sisters, and be able to take that to the people.
You're breaking up a little bit for some reason. I don't know why.
Is it better now?
A little, yeah.
Did you hear the bit about clan mothers and the
Yes.
indigenous way? I think that's another thing that's plaguing the United States, and I know it is here in Canada too, what to do about the originals of the land, because they're getting hurt and poisoned by the corporations and oil pipelines being run through absolutely everywhere. What's your take on that?
Well, my party and Roseanne and I, of course, we have a very advanced platform about Indigenous people. The United States has broken every single treaty that it ever made with tribes here in the United States. And so we have to be in solidarity with our Indigenous populations because, like you said, they're on the front lines of protecting the environment and protecting the earth. And so they not only need to be, it's almost like even when people who are progressive or revolutionary talk about the Indigenous people, it's almost like we're talking about protecting our children. It's like we have this, we have this attitude about them is that they don't, that they need to be protected like children, when we need to respect their contributions to society. We need to respect their spirituality and their culture and look at them as, comrades, and look at them as leaders in what we should be doing, not people that need to be protected, but people that we need to give the space to be able to lead the way to a more healthy society.
That is so true because, I mean, in all honesty, they've got it down. They know what they're doing. They know how to take care of the land. Obviously, the people that are in charge and have been in charge for the last 100 years in North America haven't got a clue, because they're just raping and pillaging every last bit of natural resource that they possibly can. And when they've got it all taken away from North America, then they move on to places like, oil-rich countries, which brings me to my next question. Do you think, given the events that have played out this year, that the U.S. will be involved in a war with Iran by October?
I just did a show on my radio show, Cindy Sheehan Soapbox, about Iran. And, there's two schools of thoughts on this. If Israel follows through with what it looks like it's going to do, and that would be attacking Iran. Before the presidential election, gas prices would be skyrocket, and people in the United States are more concerned about their pocketbooks and things that happen to them personally. So that would be a big boon to the election of Mitt Romney. And even though Barack Obama is, a good friend a great friend of Israel, it's perceived that Mitt Romney would be an even better friend to Israel. So if Israel does attack Iran, the U.S. will support that attack. Things in the United States will become even more expensive because when gas prices go up, the price of absolutely everything goes up. And so that would hurt Americans, and that's all Americans care about. So that would be bad for Barack Obama. But I don't care. I don't care if things get bad for Americans. I don't care if things get bad for Barack Obama. What I care about is that innocent people in Iran, and Iran has never, in like the past 500 years, been the aggressor in a war, and they're not an aggressive country, and so the people of Iran, of course, would be profoundly hurt by an Israeli-U.S. attack on their country. So it would be a huge mistake, because even though they haven't been the aggressor, they have the ability to fight back. And usually Israel and the U.S. don't attack people who have the ability to fight back.
Yeah, agreed. What are your thoughts on the idea of secret societies, Bilderberg meetings, and things like that?
I think that, like, I was just last month, I was at the Occupy Bohemian Grove event near me here in California. And what I think about those things is when the 1% or the robber class, as I call them, get together, it's not good for us. So the elitists in this country, they have the resources and they have the networks to be able to support themselves and to make life more difficult for us. So we need to oppose their meetings, whether it's Bilderberg or whatever, Bohemian Grove, the G20, the G8, the IMF, the World Bank, NATO, anything like this where they get together, we need to have opposition to. And we need to make a situation where, whether we do it from the top down or the bottom up, where we start to take back what rightly belongs to us, and to have a more equitable redistribution of the wealth of our nations, and to make life more tenable and more enjoyable for us here in the 99%. And that's only going to happen when we stop being codependent with them and realize that their wealth is not to be worshipped, it's to be resented, and it's to be fought against.
Now, here's the thing. That's all well and good, and I'm completely in line with what you're saying, but they can detain anybody without any provocation at all whatsoever, so they've basically turned around and scared the people into shutting their mouths. Now, of course, there's those that won't shut their mouths and will go out fighting no matter what, but what do you say to a people who are too afraid to open their mouths?
Well, if we're too afraid to open our mouths today, then, our children and grandchildren won't have the opportunity in the very near future. So,
It's an excuse we can't take anymore.
I can't use that as an excuse. And the other thing is, I always imagine a room that has 100 people in it. And if we're talking about the 99% and the 1%, how can one person in a room of 100, one person in a room of 100 people wreak havoc on that entire room. It's not possible. So what the 1% realize is that we vastly outnumber them, and we in the 99% have to start realizing that, is that we have the numbers, and the 1% know this, and they fear the 99%, and so that's why they're building their police state and their militaries and things like that. But we outnumber them, and we always will, and we always will have that power. And so I'm going to have to end this because I do have another appointment coming up in 2 minutes. So
that's totally fine. Cindy, thank you so much for joining today. It's been an absolute brilliant conversation, and I do hope that maybe sometime in the future we can catch up again.
It has. I've enjoyed the conversation too.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure that we have it to you ASAP. Give Roseanne my love, and in all honesty, from Vail, who never supports anything when it comes to politics, we support your grassroots movement.
Thank you. And I feel the same way you do, but this is a grassroots opportunity to spread revolution in my mind, and that's why I'm doing it.
And no one's going to stop the children of the revolution. So give my love to you and to Roseanne, and all the best, and we hope to talk to you really soon.
Perfect, Carrie.
Thank you. Okay, so that's everything for today. Again, we were joined by Cindy Sheehan. We are so thankful to have had her on the show. As you can see, whether they get into the presidency, vice presidency seats or not, the point being they are starting a grassroots movement that I suggest everybody jump onto, because why would you just shut your mouth? Have a good day. Keep your heads up. Until next time, peace.